what occurred today just after 1 p.m. here at HonorHealth Shea near 90th Street and Shea Boulevard in Scottsdale. Right now we have our detectives investigating a shooting that occurred inside the emergency room. The call came in a little after 1 p.m. this afternoon that someone in the emergency room had been shot. When officers arrived, they found a adult male subject who was being basically held down and subdued by security as well as other hospital staff members. And they went ahead and then arrested that suspect. There was a handgun found nearby, and we did have one gunshot victim. The gunshot victim is a member of the HonorHealth Shea security team, and my understanding is that they were shot in the upper body during an altercation that escalated with the suspect inside the ER. I can confirm for you right now, we have no information at this point that suggests that this was any type of active shooter situation. The suspect involved was actually brought here by a family member as a potential patient into the emergency department and was experiencing some different medical conditions, was a little bit of a reluctant patient from what I'm being told, and there was an altercation with security, which again, unfortunately escalated into that shooting where that security guard was shot. That security guard was transferred to a trauma center for a higher level of care, and understand that they're still being treated for that gunshot wound. This is definitely still an active investigation. Our detectives and our crime scene people will be out here through the remainder of the evening. There is a small part of the emergency room that is still basically locked down for the investigation, but I've been told by the hospital, by HonorHealth Shea members, that the hospital is open. People can still seek treatment and seek help here. There can still be walk-ins to the emergency room. Again, there's just a small impact right now as far as what the crime scene is, but our detectives will be out here for quite a while, again, still trying to piece together what led up to this. The only other injury that's been reported that we know of right now was one other security guard had a minor, basically hand or wrist injury while they were trying to subdue the suspect. So just one person with a gunshot wound, which is a security member here at the hospital. We are investigating that. The suspect is currently in custody, and that investigation will keep going into the next probably several hours, if not into the next day or so. So I think I hit all the points. Let me make sure I did real quick, and then we can take a few questions. Let's see. Yeah, if people do want to have any updates on the status of the hospital and operations here, that's not something that's going to come from the police department. The best location to get status updates on operations for the hospital will be through HonorHealth themselves. You can either go to HonorHealth.com, their website, or visit their social media sites, which I believe is HonorHealth AZ on all the social media sites. But for operational information, go directly to them. PD will be trying to make some updates when we can. Once we have the suspect positively identified and eventually booked, then we'll put out that information as well. And now questions.
You mentioned that you guys knew pretty much right away that this was not an active shooter situation, but we talked to some people who were patients inside the hospital, and they talked about barricading themselves, trying to, seek protection for themselves. Did officers do any sort of sweep of the hospital to help those, let those patients know that they were okay to come out? Or can you talk about the protocol when you guys first arrived?
Yeah, so the question is about protocol for when officers arrive to a scene where there has been a shooting, especially at something that's a public place, right? Like a hospital or a school or a mall. I think it's always in our minds as responding officers that it could be an active shooter situation. And so we are going to treat it in some ways as such until we know differently and we get more intel. We already had officers responding to a call of a disturbance at the ER when it actually escalated in real time as officers were responding to this call. And so there was some credible information from the beginning that this was not someone who just randomly walked in and started any kind of violence, that it was already an incident that was already occurring in the emergency room that had escalated. And that's how they initially knew it was going to be something isolated. However, yes, we do a protective sweep. We also got to make sure we know that one person's been shot. We need to make sure, has anybody else been shot or anybody else been injured? Because sometimes bullets can pass through different barriers or different mediums. And so there's always that check that happens when we respond to a call like that to make sure that it is isolated, that it is secured to one location, and then we can begin the investigation from there.
What's the condition of the victim?
Right now, I understand that that security guard that's been shot is still being treated, and they were transported in what we put out on our X as non-life-threatening. I'm not exactly sure what that is right now. I just know that they are still being treated for that gunshot wound.
Tell us about the security situation in the hospital. Obviously, he was able to walk in with a gun, right? And just pull it out. Is there no there's enough protectors going into the room? There's no a security guard standing at the door sort of thing. Should there be improvements?
So I guess the question I'm hearing is what is the security situation at the hospital that could potentially
Prevent this from happening.
Right, okay. That would either prevent this from happening again, or basically how is an armed person allowed to go? Okay. Well, there is signage up. The campus itself is it's a private property, and deadly weapons are not allowed to be on that property. That is signed up there. But again, how is that then enforced, right? So we know they have security members, right, that are patrolling and that are at most of the key locations, entrances, exits, things like that. What that exact screening process is would be something really more for HonorHealth to talk upon, not so much the police department. But there's many ways to conceal weapons, unfortunately. And again, this person was brought in as a potential patient, and so I'm not sure how they entered into the hospital, how they arrived. Just know that they were a potential patient here, and that at some point this escalated into an argument, which then escalated into that suspect shooting that security guard. And we really just hope and pray that he does make a full recovery from this, obviously.
Is that the suspect's car wrapped in crime tape behind you? Is that the suspect's car wrapped in crime tape behind you?
I am not sure if that is the suspect's vehicle or a different vehicle. I know there is some basically signage in there that says your car will be towed if it's parked in a certain spot, so it could very well be, it honestly could be one of the PD vehicles, and the officer detective didn't want their vehicle towed, and so they wrapped it in tape. I'm not sure.
Was the security guard wearing a bulletproof vest?
I don't have any information right now that would confirm that the security guard did have body armor on, or if that was the case in this particular instance. There are some of the security team members here that do wear body armor. I just don't have confirmation if this victim, security guard, was wearing body armor at the time of this incident.
The security guards here use canines, and was there one present at the time?
Again, more of those questions specifically for the security plan will probably have to be asked to HonorHealth. I can only answer that I have seen HonorHealth security members have canines. I'm not sure if there was one here in place at the time of this incident earlier this afternoon at 1 p.m.
Would Scottsdale PD recommend? Are there any recommendations for hospitals, I guess, to follow?
Well, we do partner with many different organizations within our city. HonorHealth is one of our partners, and if there is ever a time that they would ask us for our opinion, we would be more than happy to potentially work together. I know we have done some practice drills in the past. We've actually done active shooter practice drills with HonorHealth staff before, where basically we have our officers respond to the hospital. They get changed out with practice ammunition, which is basically like paint bullets, and it's the real staff here. We make sure that there's no patients directly involved in the training area, but it is something that we do on a regular basis where we actually train together and work together, and that partnership is important to us. And so we always want to make sure that we're working together with our partners, whether it's the schools in our city, the hospitals in our city, Fashion Square Mall, all these different locations that we can just have that great partnership with and make sure that we have that training plan in progress, or that training plan in play, and do that. And if there's ever recommendations that we can give that they want, of course we work with them on that. As far as, again, right now today, there's still a lot to be known about what happened, how exactly it happened. To really say what recommendations would be right now would be pretty really too early on.
We heard from a patient that there was some sort of announcement made. Do you know if there was ever a shelter in place or a code called because of the situation over the intercom speaker?
I do recall in one of the briefings hearing that announcement being made. And again, until we know that it's not an active shooter situation, it is better to usually err that it might be. And so then that shelter in place, we always recommend people that might find themselves in a situation that's uncertain or might be an active shooter situation, that you try to run, you try to hide, and if necessarily, you try to fight. And again, part of that training that we've done with HonorHealth in the past would help support that if they're in their workstations and they could potentially hunker down or they can potentially run, that they would do that. But also knowing that Scottsdale PD is quickly responding to that location to assist them. And so don't have 100% confirmation that went out, but it does sound consistent with some other information I heard earlier in the briefing. And that's just, again, to help protect other people in that immediate area and in the rest of the hospital. Again, if something was to happen in an isolated area but then branch out from there, it could be potentially catastrophic. And thankfully, it's not what happened today. Thankfully, this was really an isolated incident that occurred, and that because of the brave actions of the security guards and some of the other hospital staff and then the swiftness of our officers responding, the suspect was able to get basically detained and arrested right away. And that, I'm sure, made a huge difference.
Can you tell us anything about the weapon? What type of weapon you have? What type of weapon?
All I'm allowed to tell you right now about the weapon was it is a handgun. And so, again, something small, something that could be potentially concealed and possibly concealed past security. That's all I can tell you at this point.
Thanks so much.
If anybody wants to know more information, again, operational-wise, they can go to HonorHealth.com and see about operations. Right now, the hospital is deemed safe. It is operational as far as what I'm being told, and as far as information I can share with you, is that people can come here and still receive care if they need to. There's a small portion of the hospital right now that's still part of the investigation, and as soon as we can be done with that, then we'll release it. And as far as updates from Scottsdale PD, I would imagine that we'll probably put out a brief summary of some of the things that we talked about in this interview today a little bit later in an email. And then besides that, then probably look for, once we get some confirmation on the suspect's name and when they're booked, probably then some updated information on that suspect and what they are going to be booked for. That'll be probably in the next day or so.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Does anybody else need any shots of me just standing here or doing anything? Looking like I'm talking, pointing?
Well, now someone's behind you, so we won't care.
Do any reporters need 2 shots or anything? Or any- That's such a dangerous question to actually ask.
Well, actually, I got 5 minutes.
Well, yeah. They're going to be about